February 6, 1862. Tennessee River. 75 minutes. That's all an unknown general needed to destroy a fort, capture a Confederate commander, and change the entire Civil War. But there's something insane about this story no one has told you. Grant didn't even set foot in the fort. His soldiers arrived after the white flag. And yet, this was the most important victory of his career. In the next 15 minutes, you will discover how Bruce Catton, the historian who sold millions, uncovered the secret hidden at Fort Henry. A secret so powerful it transformed a failed Illinois drunk into the man who ended the Confederacy. January 1862. Washington, D.C. Lincoln is desperate. The Union has lost almost every battle so far. McClellan won't move a muscle. Burnside is bogged down. And the South? Dominating. Then a telegram arrives from a general no one took seriously. Name, Ulysses S. Grant. Reputation, a failed drunk who was kicked out of the army years earlier. The telegram read, "I will capture Fort Henry. With or without permission." Lincoln read it. Threw it in the trash. Didn't even reply. But Bruce Catton, 90 years later, writing Grant Moves South, discovered something in the archives. Something that changed everything. Grant didn't attack Fort Henry because it was strong. He attacked because it was weak. And because the Tennessee River water was rising. That's right. The most brilliant military strategy of 1862 depended on the rain. Bruce Catton describes Fort Henry in Grant Moves South this way: built in the wrong place, at the wrong time, by the wrong person. The fort was 40 feet above the river's normal level. But in February 1862? Torrential rains. The Tennessee rose 33 feet in 3 weeks. The muddy water was flooding the gunpowder magazines. Soldiers slept with soaked boots. And the Confederate commander, General Lloyd Tillman, knew they would either drown or die fighting. Feel the difference? Catton discovered Tillman's personal letters. One of them told the Confederate High Command, 4 days before the attack, "This fort cannot be defended. I request reinforcements or permission to evacuate." The response? Hold fast. No reinforcements available. Tillman had 2,500 men. He should have had 10,000. He had 17 working cannons. He should have had 40. And of the 17 cannons, 11 were sinking in the mud. Then Grant shows up with 15,000 soldiers. And 7 gunboats. But it's not the numbers that matter. It's the timing. Bruce Catton reveals in Grant Moves South something no other historian had noticed. Grant didn't want to win Fort Henry. He wanted to humiliate the South. Because Fort Henry was the gate. 30 miles upstream? Fort Donelson. Another 125 miles? Nashville. Another 250 miles? The heart of the Confederacy. Catton writes that Grant told the flotilla commander, Andrew Foote, "Don't wait for my infantry. Attack alone." Foote replied, "My ships will sink if I get too close." Grant, "Then get too close." February 6, noon. 4 ironclads and 3 wooden gunboats enter the Tennessee. Distance from the fort? 600 yards. Then 400. Then 200. Catton describes with surgical detail based on military reports, the smell of burnt gunpowder mixed with coal steam. Sailors carrying 90-pound projectiles with bleeding hands. The leather gloves melting from the cannon heat. And Tillman inside? Alone. Because he did something unbelievable. He sent 2,300 of his 2,500 men away. To Fort Donelson. Early that morning. Before the attack started. He was left with 54 artillerists. And himself. 12:05 p.m. First Confederate shot. Hits the USS Cincinnati. Kills 2 sailors. 1:20 p.m. Tillman raises the white flag. 75 minutes. From the first to the last shot. And here is the bizarre part of the story Catton tells in full detail. Grant missed his own battle. He was coming over land with 15,000 soldiers. But it rained so much the roads turned into a swamp. Horses sank up to their chests. Wagons broke axles. Catton interviewed veterans decades later. One said, "You didn't walk. You swam in mud. Every step weighed 10 pounds of clay stuck to your boots." When Grant finally got close to Fort Henry, 2:30 p.m. an hour after the surrender, the Union flag was already raised. Foote had already captured Tillman. And the sailors? Laughing at the muddy soldiers arriving late. It was the greatest humiliation of Grant's career. Or it should have been. But Catton discovered something in Grant's personal letters that changes everything. Grant wrote to his wife, Julia, 3 days later, "It matters not who fired the last shot. It matters that I chose where to fire. And I chose when. The fort fell because I said it would fall." Catton writes in Grant Moves South, "That day, Grant learned that strategy is not about being on the battlefield. It's about choosing the battlefield. And he was right. Because while everyone was celebrating Fort Henry, Grant was already marching toward Fort Donelson. Without asking permission. Again. Bruce Catton spent 8 years researching Grant. Read 10,000 letters. 5,000 military reports. Interviewed 50 veterans before they died. And you know what he discovered? Fort Henry was the mold. All of Grant's later victories, Donelson, Vicksburg, Chattanooga, followed the same formula: brutal speed. Attack before the enemy can prepare. Constant pressure. No time to reorganize. Goal beyond the battle. Always aiming for the next city. Fort Donelson, 10 days later, Grant surrounds, attacks, accepts only unconditional surrender. 13,000 Confederates captured. Vicksburg, 1863, same thing. 30,000 captured. Lee at Appomattox, 1865, same thing. War ends. Catton calculated, of the 15,000 soldiers Grant commanded at Fort Henry, 12,000 were alive at the end of the war. Because Grant did not waste lives. He ended battles fast. Other generals waged war for years. Grant waged war for hours. Fort Henry, 75 minutes. 5 Union dead. 21 Confederates. If the whole war had been like that, 620,000 would not have died. Bruce Catton publishes Grant Moves South. An instant bestseller. Because he did something radical. He showed that Grant wasn't a hero. He was a mathematician. While all the other generals thought about how to win this battle, Grant thought, how to end this war? And Fort Henry was the day he discovered the answer. What do you take from this? First, speed trumps perfection. Grant attacked with half the resources he should have had. And won. Second, choose the battlefield. Don't fight where the enemy is strong. Fight where he is weak. Third, always aim beyond the target. Fort Henry wasn't the goal. It was the gate to the goal. And Bruce Catton? He applied the same technique to writing. He didn't write about battles. He wrote about people in battles. He didn't tell facts. He told feelings. That's why you made it this far. Because this video isn't about Fort Henry. It's about how one man can change everything. When he chooses the right moment. Lincoln read the Fort Henry report. Wrote in the corner, promote Grant. 2 years later? Grant was General-in-Chief of all Union armies. 4 years later? The war was over. It all started with 75 minutes. And rising water. If you understood why this 1-hour battle changed a 4-year war. Hit like. And tell me in the comments, what other small moment changed history forever?